Good afternoon, and I would like to call to order the Budget and Finance Committee for the City of Everett. Today is March 9th, 2022, and I would like to welcome our Budget and Finance Committee members. We have one of our new council members, Don Schwab, here with us, and then we have Judy Toohey as well, and then I'm the third council member on the Budget and Finance Committee. Today we have quite an agenda, and we've got administration here to help us get through that. I think I'm going to just hand it over to Susie Haugen, the Director of Finance for the city, and let her take it away.
Susie, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much.
Hi, Susie.
Hello. So typically, at Budget Committee, when we meet in person, I just hand out packets and we sit around a table and go over that. But since we're still virtual, I went ahead and put the information on a PowerPoint because I think that would be easier for everybody. And so at this moment, I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so our agenda today, we're going to be hoping to talk about the Budget Committee schedule for a bit so we can map that out for the year. And then we'll do a little housekeeping issue on our capitalization threshold. We have a preview of Budget Amendment number 1, and then a potential timeline for a Levy Lid Lift. So with that, we will go ahead right into the calendar. And so Brianna and I are in the middle of developing our 2023 budget development calendar, and we'd like to put the Budget Committee meetings on it with the potential items that we would be bringing forward to Budget Committee on those dates. So we were kind of hoping to get an idea of when that might be.
The Budget Committee meeting schedule?
Yes. So
I think we can determine that here in our committee. So we are looking for a monthly meeting, is that correct?
That was my understanding.
Okay, wouldn't be any more frequent than monthly. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have any. In the past, we had occasionally done that. Well, I guess I'm sorry, I didn't ask Deb Williams to give me the dates of when the other regular meetings are, but I will ask the committee members to weigh in. For me, it's probably easier to do it at like this hour before a council meeting. Does that work for Dawn? What do you think?
Yeah, that'd be my preference. It works really well.
Okay. Yep. And Judy?
Yes, that's definitely better.
Yeah, it makes for a busy evening, but it's easier to coordinate it.
I think so too. Deb Williams, I'm going to ask you, are there any committees that have already spoken for any specific Wednesday of the month, I would say, that we would have to worry about coordinating against?
President Stonecipher, we have no committee meetings scheduled at this time, so you can pick any Wednesday.
Great. Susie, so we're here in the first Wednesday. Is that a good meeting? We used to do it on the first Wednesdays back in prior years.
Absolutely. Whichever Wednesday works best for the council members.
Okay. You don't have any timing issues with, close, month-end close or anything like that you're worried about?
Well, yeah, if it were later in the month, we would maybe be able to bring forward, if there were time at the Budget Committee meeting, we could bring the prior month's financials reports to go over if the time permitted, which often it doesn't, but that'd be the only consideration about doing later. As far as any other day, it's really up to the committee members. whatever works.
Well, let me look at a calendar.
I'm satisfied with the first Wednesday.
Yeah.
Does that include the first day of the month? If it lands on a Wednesday, I guess that still would be okay.
Yeah, and we would just be probably 1 week behind on our, or 1 month behind on our monthly financials. So I think that seems reasonable. Why don't we stick with the first Wednesday of the month, regardless of what day that is?
Okay, great. We will get that programmed into the calendar and then we'll bring a draft forward for your
Perfect.
consideration.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for being flexible.
Oh, you absolutely. So the next item is just a housekeeping issue. So it deals with the capitalization of the city's assets, and our current threshold at which we capitalize costs other than infrastructure is $5,000. And we have an ordinance, a city ordinance 2490-00 that requires council to review this threshold every 5 years. And unfortunately, it's been a little longer than that. And so I thought I would take advantage of having this budget committee to at least get it before you. We're not really recommending any changes to that threshold at this time. It's still consistent with the state's threshold. What we are looking at, accounting staff is looking at the possibility of maybe recommending a change for the capitalization threshold for our buildings and building improvements. $5,000 is pretty small for that, and the state has a higher threshold than that. And so they're going to be looking at that, not right now because we're in the middle of closing books and doing financial reports, but perhaps later in the summer or early fall. And we may be bringing forward a recommendation to change a couple of the asset classes later in the year. But this was I just wanted to bring this forward because it had been too long since council had taken a look at it.
Susie, what are the threshold limits now? You said they're a little higher.
It's $5,000 for the city's threshold, with the exception of infrastructure, and that's 350,000.
Okay.
But we're 5,000 across the board, and the state actually has different capitalization thresholds for buildings and building improvements.
Okay.
And so we might want to up those. It's a little more efficient, and quite frankly, building improvements, there really isn't anything that you can do for $5,000 these days, right? So it might be time to modernize that number a little bit. So we'll be looking at that, making sure we understand where our peers are at, where the state's at, and what the benefits to it would be, so we can bring that forward.
Is there a sliding scale? Is it is it an administrative code? Is that where it's written?
No, this is a city ordinance that council adopted back in 2000. And
no,
I
meant the state guidelines.
Oh, the state guidelines. That would be. It's probably in the code.
Could you send me the references?
Oh, absolutely.
At some point, not tomorrow, but with plenty of time to review it before we start bringing up the idea, that would be great.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Susie, this makes a lot of sense to me. I deal with this with a lot of clients in my day job. And I mean, I have some clients that have like $1,000 for capitalization threshold. They just have asset tags on every single thing in their whole system. And so I'm just curious, once something is capitalized, so if something is under the capitalization threshold, are you still asset tagging it and keeping track of it as for inventory purposes, or no?
It depends. So we have also a small and attractive asset policy. And so if it's something that's considered at high risk to
computers,
yes, things like that could be easily carried away. Even if they're under 5,000, we do track those. But we don't capitalize them. We expense.
Got it. I just wanted to make sure we had something, so we were tracking those other things.
Absolutely. And, you know, I can, when I send out the state's policy on that, I can include our small and attractive assets policy, just so you have that for your review.
That'd be great.
That would be great.
Okay.
And I don't remember this ever coming up in the audit, in the state audit. Have they ever mentioned the capitalization thresholds?
No, because it's really a decision of the city.
Okay,
Because we're more conservative than the state regulation.
right.
So, you know, the $5,000 for most other assets is consistent with the state's policy right now. It's just our larger, you know, building improvements that they have the higher thresholds that we might want to consider.
Yeah, we probably do, because it's
Yeah,
really
I think
hard
it's a
to-
great idea. And buildings or remodeling, I would welcome using the state standard.
Mhm.
I understand maybe being a little more conservative for things that might have legs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So look for us to bring this back maybe in the fall.
Okay.
Maybe in
So
the-
our current ordinance doesn't require, we don't have to bring the ordinance forward for council action at this point. You were just kind of trying to do the compliance due diligence on the ordinance that we currently have.
Yes.
Okay, great.
It doesn't have, the ordinance doesn't have a sunset date in it whatsoever.
No, it just asks that or requires us to bring the topic up with
Okay.
council for review.
All right,
And it's been more than 5 years, I will admit. So,
all right.
so it's time
Mhm.
to take a look
Great.
at this. Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right. So next item up is a preview of budget amendment number 1. We have planned to bring that forward for first reading, the ordinance for first reading and briefing on March 30th. And we wanted to give budget committee a preview of the items that we've collected thus far. We're almost done. Rand's still got a couple that she's working on, but this is the bulk of them. So we wanted to give an opportunity for the budget committee to review those beforehand. So I'll just kind of walk through these, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And the first group on this first table are the general government reappropriations, which represent unspent budget authority from 2021 being brought forward to 2022 to complete projects or direct capital. So first we have the completion of the police study, and a total of $125,000 was budgeted in 2021, but only a little over $21,000 has been spent to date. So they're in the middle of that, and I understand they expect to complete it in June or July of this year. Then we have the transfer that I spoke about at the budget briefing in February of $2.8 million to CIP1 to help address the maintenance deficiencies that Jeff Harris went over at the budget briefing in February. And this amount represents the unbudget variance from 2020. We have a couple of small amounts for retirement payout for animal services and the Council of Neighborhoods retreat, which they were unable to do last year. There is the funding for the lateral hiring incentive for police that was approved last year, as well as some maintenance and operations and grant funds for purchases or projects started last year, but not able to be completed by year end. Fire, parks, and the library also have reappropriation requests for M&O expenditures and grant funding from last year. Municipal arts would like to carry forward outstanding cultural arts grants and the funding for the COVID-19 art project. And streets would like to reappropriate unspent overlay and projects funds as well. And the last item is for salary changes that went into effect last year after the proposed budget was developed. Most of the changes were to raise the level of our IT technical staff. IT had lost over 30% of its staff over the past 2 years, and they were having a really hard time recruiting replacements. And ultimately, this change was needed for the city to be able to retain and recruit qualified IT staff. Other salary revisions were for police and fire command positions, which were also far below the market rates.
Question for you.
Mhm.
These are exempt, all exempt employees?
No,
Okay.
the IT staff were primarily AFSCME employees.
Okay.
In fact, I think they were 100% AFSCME
Okay.
employees.
So was it included in the contract change or?
I'm going to turn that question over to Lori because they're in the middle of a contract. so-
Okay, was reclassification? I don't have
Right,
to
but
read-
it was included in the salary ordinance that
It was.
was approved
Okay.
at the end of December. We did that work. And there were a few appointed position, but primarily they were AFSCME. So we negotiated with AFSCME on this as well.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Non-general government reappropriations include funds to complete the 2021 vehicle purchases, funding for public programming and technology from the library reserve, EMS bunker gear and command staff salary revisions similar to what I mentioned for the general government. We have the carry forward of unspent 1% for the arts funding and for the ARPA programs that were approved last year, and a variety of projects in progress for CDBG, golf, IT, and the CIP funds. For general government amendments, we have expenditure authority for grants for legal, police, fire, and the library that have already been accepted by council. We have the addition of a temporary business analyst in HR to help implement the new Kronos timekeeping system upgrade, and a permanent HR analyst to focus on police recruitment. We need to appropriate the lease payments for the Bezos Academy, and there was an accounting change regarding the fire insurance premium tax that we received from the state to help fund the Left One fire pension. We have always posted it directly to the fire pension fund, but the auditors now want us to first post it to the general fund and then transfer it to the pension fund. And so we need budget authority in order to do that. I can't explain why they want us to do that, but this is just one of those accounting rule changes. There is a half-time network systems analyst who is actually a developer for IT, and an animal care and customer service assistant for veterinary services. And we did not have quite enough set aside in the original budget for the IAFF contract, the firefighters contract, so an amendment's necessary to provide the necessary additional funding.
Susie, I'm seeing quite a few staffing changes and increases. So have these all been approved, or are these being approved in this amendment?
These are being approved in this amendment.
Okay. I think it'd be helpful for us to see kind of that FTE analysis that we get in the budget to see where these are coming in.
Okay. I can get that out.
Because I'm curious, like animal services, we cut FTEs out of there over the past couple years, and so now we're adding back.
This position is going to be funded almost entirely by a grant, at least for the first part, and it's also going to be helping them provide those vet services, low-cost vet services that we spoke about last year during the budget hearings.
I was under the impression that that grant was just for supplies and things like that for the animal services.
The funding from the ASPCA does cover the salaries for this position. And then there is projected revenue that we should be able to generate from this position to cover the expense in future years. So that was part of the ASCPA funding.
Okay.
And we can sure provide you more detail on that.
We just
that
had
as
that
well, if that's
come to
helpful.
council, didn't we? Just have that come to council?
The grant, that's correct. That's correct. And I think it's been a few years, Brenda, since there's been a reduction in FTEs at the animal shelter. So that table will be helpful for that information.
Yeah, I would like to see that. And then the addition of looks like 2 FTEs in HR, I would
Yes, the first is a temporary position to help them get through a major upgrade in our Chronos timekeeping system.
Mm,
So that's just a temporary position. And then the second position is an HR analyst to focus on police recruitment, because they're, quite frankly, it's a big job and they need the additional help to get that, to try to
Mhm.
get ahead on that.
Is that a full-time position at
That's a full-time
87,000?
permanent addition.
Does that include the benefits cost?
Yes, it's not a full year in this table because the position isn't hired yet.
Right.
It's
Okay.
just a partial year.
Okay. And what other? I guess the other one is just the half-time network systems analyst.
Yes, and that one is actually an actual developer. We currently have one developer on staff to do all of that level of work. This person is actually our former professional services provider for maintaining our tax and license system. So he's already familiar with that. And so we're reducing part of this, the cost there includes reducing our M&O that we used to pay out for maintenance of that.
Mhm.
But this person is also going to be rebuilding our employee budgeting system and a couple other vital homegrown systems that we don't have the capacity to deal with.
To deal with, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
All
have just
right.
one question on the HR analysis that we're adding to focus on the police recruitment. Will that person be able to do anything else? Have opportunity to do other types of jobs for the HR department?
Lori, do you want to take that one?
You bet. Am I unmuted? I think I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Yes, they certainly can. I think that the recruitment work citywide, but particularly with police, has dramatically increased. And so really our priority is police recruitment, but they're not solely dedicated to that if we found there was capacity.
Okay.
Okay, now we have our non-general amendments, and so first we have appropriating the funding for that ASPCA grant that we were just speaking about for the animal shelter. And we also have a grant for the library. There is the EMS side of the additional funding needed for the firefighter contract. And we have reappropriation, or we have amendments, for from CIP1 for the fire admin building tenant improvements, and in CIP3 for the forest restoration project. And we have funding in CIP4 for phase 3 of the downtown streetscape, and funding for the Eclipse Mill Park and Riverfront Trail improvements. And that is the end of our budget amendment.
What is the downtown streetscape phase 3? Is that the Rucker Avenue?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually had some couple of questions. I'm assuming these projects have already all been approved. I'm still new, obviously. What was the criteria on choosing these projects? Was it something that's already been discussed? I don't want to rehash everything all over, but I'm assuming this was something, a lot of tough decisions to make when we have so many needs in the city. Could you just maybe briefly talk a little bit about how you decided on these projects?
Yeah, you're absolutely right that there's certainly not enough money to take care of all of the projects that we need or want to do. These projects were already approved via funding or plans and systems ordinances.
Mhm.
And so all this is appropriating the budget authority to transfer out the identified funding from our CIP funds into the construction funds. So this is, these have been before council, but with fund accounting we have to do everything twice.
Mhm.
So you get to approve it for when you're approving the actual project,
Yep.
and then we come in behind and have to get the budget authority so we can transfer funds into the project fund.
Mhm.
I think I'll say like the downtown streetscape, I believe that project, I can't remember when that was approved. I mean, this has gone on for some time, but that was a project that the Stephenson administration had developed and basically promised. So I think we had didn't we have some significant grant funds that we received, or matching
Yes.
funds, federal matching funds for that?
And there was a
I don't-
lot of public works work that was also completed. I think they had to replace all of the drain pipes
The
and
mains
all
or
that.
something, yeah.
And it also ties back to the work, not this particular funding, but the whole project concept, the work on, is it Hoyt? Yeah, Hoyt,
Mhm.
all of that.
Mhm.
And that's actually been, you're right, it has been going on for years. So.
Yes.
So is this project then completed, Susie, or is there still more to happen?
I believe this is it.
Okay.
And to remind me where the Eclipse Mill Park and Riverfront Trail improvements, is this the
Yeah.
total funding for that?
Oh, no, this is going to be design. And they're starting the design work. Remember, we're going to fund the actual work with lift grant proceeds, and because this is down at the riverfront,
Mhm.
and we got that lift grant, and where we can get up to 500,000 a year from the state based on incremental revenues on that site. So once we get towards construction, we will most likely be bringing forward a general obligation bond issue to actually construct the project so that we can use this 500,000 a year to pay on debt service. Because you can't, if we spent cash on hand, which we really don't have, to build it at cash funded, we would still only get 500,000. Then if we issue bonds, then we can have the bonds paid for the whole project over time.
Mhm. And this was a requirement of our obligation with shelter, correct?
This is part of that agreement, yeah.
You know, I asked, I think a couple weeks ago or a month ago, for a fresh briefing on the Riverfront project, because I know they're really doing a lot of construction down there. So it would be nice to kind of roll them together when you talk about this. I assume there'll be a lot of questions from especially the new council members, and I would just like to know where they're sitting, because I know with pandemic things changed a lot. So if we can get an
Sure.
update, that'd be great.
We'd be happy to do that.
That's a good idea. Okay.
Okay, and unless there's further questions, we'll move on to the Levy Lid Lift potential timeline. So, seeking voter approval for new revenue to fund basic services has been a topic of discussion for some time now. And this slide provides the required timeline should council decide to put a lid lift on the ballot in November of this year. It's intended to be very high level with just key dates for city actions to meet the November ballot deadlines. So January through May are identified as being spent on briefings and council review. A ballot measure would need to be drafted and first reading by June 29th with adoption no later than July 13th, so that it would be in effect to be submitted to Snohomish County by August 2nd, which is the cutoff day for ballot submission. And the vote would be on November 8th. Again, this is just a very simplified look at the process, but these dates are important to keep in mind as you consider the option of bringing a lid lift to the voters for a November ballot. So I'm, happy to answer any questions about this. Obviously, there's a lot of work, a lot of review to be done in order to move this forward. A lot of decisions to be made the type of lid lift, if you decide to go forward, the amount of the lid lift, the services that would be funded with the lift, many decisions to be made.
So Susie, I have a question. So then, so we would put together what that, if we were to come to, we were to do this, we would set what that lid lift percentage was. Is that right?
Yes,
And what it would fund.
council would make that determination.
Are there any parameters on that?
Well, I think I would recommend that we spend a meeting looking at what the potential impacts of different decisions might look like. I do have a tool that I can bring to create some scenarios for you to look at.
Okay.
I think that it's a big decision to make, and so need to spend some time looking at that.
Yeah, because
Susie, Mike, go ahead, Judy.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so you're talking about meetings and scenarios. Is from a process perspective, is this something that this committee is going to be dealing with, or is this something that we will be dealing with as a council of the whole?
I think that really is council's decision on how you would like us to proceed.
Well, I was thinking it may not be a bad idea to let the governmental affairs committee talk about it. And when we're talking about the timeline itself. Now I know there are other options. I'm advocating a different date for a vote, but I would like to maybe have at some point have a discussion on the actual voting date for the reasons of having on November 8th. I'm sure part of the reason is voter turnout, part of it is costs,
Right.
that sort of thing. So I think as far as the timeline, if there is at least a couple different points of views expressed about why November 8th and maybe choosing a different date just for a short discussion on that.
Well, I can make a couple of comments on that.
Yeah.
So if we are to be able to, with a positive vote, of course, have revenue for 2023, then November is the last ballot we can go to in order to actually have that on the tax rolls for 23.
Right.
So, and the only ballot before that is in August. And if we were to try to get it on for August, it's a little late. We would have about a month to accomplish everything before first reading of a ballot measure. So there would, I'm not sure that is possible.
Even viable. So this is really all about getting it certified and approved to the county for January's payroll or tax roll.
Yes.
I just think that kind of discussion just needs, just a few sentences on that would be good. Also, I too support the idea of looking at some different formulas of Levy Lid. You said you had a spreadsheet or some sort of formulas set up on the different options.
I have a little modeling tool.
Yeah, modeling tool.
That I've created that we could show you the impacts of different levy amounts, levy lid lift amounts, both what it would mean to, for example, an average property owner and what it would mean to our deficit going forward. So, that might be easier to do at a budget committee meeting.
Yeah, I think so too.
Than full council, but that would certainly, I could do either.
Right.
It's certainly up to you.
Yeah.
Well, I would suggest we look at a broad amount, different types, maybe in this committee, in the financial impacts, and maybe narrow it down for the council to review. Obviously, the council can choose whatever they want, even if we don't present that, but maybe narrowing it down to some choices. That's just a thought I had.
And Susie, in your modeling, I assume you'd be able to project out how the different models would affect the overall deficit over 5, 10, 15 years.
Yes,
I think that's super
I have it set up for
important.
6 years.
Yeah, and then also, your scenario, I assume, would show us what the impact is for our average home.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, to me, this timeline looks very aggressive. I think it will be hard to get through all of that. And the one concern I have is that because it's kind of a momentous decision, I want to make sure that we are having briefings to the rest of the council to kind of keep them along. This is one of those issues where it'll be hard for them, I think, to catch up if we get, 3 months down the road and are just trying to give them sort of a recommendation from us. So I like the idea of doing some of the modeling work here because I think that makes sense, for this committee to be looking at the modeling. But at that point, I do think at some point we have to turn this over to Council Committee of the Whole because it will be such a momentous decision. I mean, I've been on council for 18 years and have never considered any kind of taxation measure like this. So I think we might want to make sure that we are keeping them very well apprised of our work and the progress on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially, I think it's important to talk about or have a discussion if we do not go forward with a property tax levy lid. What were the tough choices that we'd have to make?
Yeah.
Well, we actually do plan to develop 2 budgets this year. And one will be assuming a lid lift is successful, and the other will be assuming a lid lift is not successful. So because we have deadlines and, legal deadlines that we have to meet for certain milestones that we have to accomplish related to adopting a budget for 23, we do have to do that. Because it's not the kind of thing that you can make a quick decision on,
Right.
in the moment after the election. So we would be coming to you, Budget Committee, certainly with both budgets.
Yeah.
So,
And also looking for input, obviously, on, where we should cut for the unsuccessful budget.
So Susie,
Yeah.
how quickly could you put together some scenarios for us, some models for us to look at?
Whenever you're ready. If we're going to meet on the 1st of every month, then that would be on April 6th. If you want to meet beforehand, we certainly can do that because I've developed the tool, so I'm ready to go. And Lori,
Well, I was just going to add that Council President Stonecipher, I know we were going to meet with you on the budget calendar, and I'm wondering if we can talk through some timing when we do that meeting, the latter part of this month, and see, where it all fits, lay it out in more detail, perhaps with your help.
Yeah, I think we might want to look at that. We may need some additional meetings other than just the 1st of the month if we're going to meet that. I mean,
I would agree because June is coming quickly.
Yeah.
And I would think that the Council of the Whole would need probably a workshop on this, Brenda.
For sure.
Yeah. And, and maybe more. I mean, this is a pretty big deal. And I know that they've all been kind of anticipating this. And so, but it's a huge decision. So we need to make sure that everybody gets everything answered and fully understands everything. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. Lori, maybe when you and Susie and I sit down and talk about that, we can outline a potential plan for when the Budget and Finance Committee will be meeting and looking at certain things, and then where those things need to be transferred and brought to the in some format to the council as a whole.
Yeah.
And maybe we can look at a workshop in maybe the end of April. It will have to be, I'm sure, because I think one of the important key pieces is really sort of what is going to be on the table in terms of budget cuts if we don't do this. I think that is vital information to how we think about the decision, because the magnitude of the deficit is, you know, at this point just so vast that I just don't even know what we would think of cutting.
Right.
I mean, it's like it's almost like you have to lose an entire department or something, and we have no departments that are extraneous. So I just don't know how we would manage that.
I guess I would recommend, if I'm going to be bringing forth the modeling tool for budget committee to work through, probably an entire budget committee meeting dedicated to the topic, so that we're not just, so we can devote our time and focus to this issue.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I will work then, I guess, with Susie, with you and Lori and the mayor to come up with a schedule that we think will fit the bill for all this. And I agree with Councilmember Schwab that the November 8th ballot, I mean, it seems like the one that we should be focusing on. But I wonder about the advisability of having something like this on that ballot.
Mhm.
So we can maybe think about that as well. It may be that we don't have any other option. So what happens, Susie, if we were to do like a special election in the winter in February or?
We would not receive taxes until 2024.
Okay, so it's a full year cycle. It's not like
Yes.
some of them where you can get the next quarter. Okay. Well,
great timeline.
it feels like we're back up against the wall here.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll come back with a schedule and figure out how best to roll it out. But I think the committee should probably plan that we will be meeting more than once a month.
Yeah, I would just throw it out now. I don't think we should be waiting. I mean, April, April, May, June. I mean, we should probably plan on some more meetings before, maybe twice a month for now. We can always cancel them. Well, actually, we can because they're public, but I don't know. It seems.
Yeah, the only other meeting that I know that I'll be scheduling are the Public Safety Committee meetings. And so right now we're kind of waiting for the first analysis from the police study. So when that comes back, then we'll meet, but we haven't scheduled. So if we get the budget committee kind of penciled in, then I'll know to work around those dates, because I do like this timeline, the time frame.
And same with the Governmental Affairs Committee. This is a higher priority. We'll need to work around this. I plan on scheduling one of them as just a debriefing from the previous session.
Okay. Should we pencil in like the 1st and the 3rd Wednesdays for now?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Yeah, if there's any way that this is gonna really get done, if it's gonna happen, then yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
And then we'll come up with what we fill in on that and figure out where this plugs into the council meetings as well.
Yeah, I had a thought too. Perhaps you just put something on the agenda instead of just the council comments. just a debriefing from the latest committee
Mhm.
report as just an agenda item.
Yeah, that could be.
Just a thought.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, and so these meetings are recorded, so our colleagues can watch them at any time they're available on YouTube? Or do they go on this website through Granicus?
I know they're on YouTube.
Okay,
They are on YouTube and Granicus.
okay. All right, well, I think, you know, our colleagues would be well advised to be watching these. And we can certainly communicate that to them.
Mhm.
So they can be
So-
watching our meetings as well.
Brenda, when we go back to live meetings, in-person meetings, which I assume we will, maybe before the next meeting,
Yes,
will they be able to sit in the audience like we did before?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
My understanding is they just can't participate in
Right,
the
okay.
discussion.
Just hadn't gotten that far in our conversations.
Yeah, we
as to How
haven't.
much back to normal we
Mhm, I
really
know.
are. Okay.
Okay.
So our next budget committee meeting will be in April.
Thought
Sixth.
April 6th was
April
what,
6th.
and then maybe we'll schedule the second one for April 20th. And then maybe make a decision at that point if we're continuing on with 2 meetings a month.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe we'll be ready to do a retreat with the full council by then.
Mhm.
You know, if we work really
With the
hard on 2
information.
meetings.
Yeah. To line up the scenarios.
I certainly think we need to have a conversation at some point about the presentation to the public.
Mhm.
I think that's very important. Councilmember Stonecipher, you may want to decide what committee you want that to work on that separately, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm assuming, so does administration have a public, you know, kind of information campaign designed yet for this?
And Nick may want to jump on here, but there certainly is work that we can do as a city and work that we cannot do as a city. And so I
Mhm.
think in our planning, we can discuss and
Mhm.
help define that. So I think the short answer is we can certainly provide educational information to the public and plan to do
Mhm.
so. There's just some clear lines between
Mhm.
what we can
Right.
be doing
Right.
as a public entity.
Yep.
Yeah, the only thing
Okay.
I will add, Council President and committee members, City Attorney, Deputy City Attorney Ramsey Rammerman, I believe, has put together a memo that we will share with council and might even be worth a follow-up discussion at a subsequent meeting to
Mhm.
clearly articulate and educate both staff as well as council on what is appropriate within the public sphere and with a ballot measure, what isn't appropriate within the public
Right.
sphere. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while since we've done any of this. So I think the last time we were facing this was maybe the transit tax increase,
Mhm.
sales tax increase. And that has been, yikes, 15 years ago, Susie.
Yep.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, that will be helpful. We'll probably all want to know that. And I'm in with new council members who have never done this and been involved in. I know Councilmember Schwab, you have, but we certainly want to make sure that everybody understands what they can and can't do, so they don't do anything that they
Mhm.
shouldn't.
Right.
Great. Okay, well, a lot of work to do. Is that the end of our agenda for today?
That completes our work for tonight.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Councilmember Schwab, Councilmember Tui?
No,
Oh,
sounds
thank
good.
you.
We've
Thanks.
got our work cut out for us.
Yes.
A big year.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right,
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll
see you in a bit.
see you soon.